So I think with everything being said, right, after all has been done and has been said, some things will still remain, whilst some other things, they'll remain there forever. Other things will go, other things will stay. One thing that I think out of everything that will stay is photography. Those portraits that men and women take their time to take, those they'll remain forever. And in our today's episode, we are joined by one of the greatest photographers to ever grace this land. We are blessed to have him on the part of the IroC podcast. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the IroC podcast. And this is the intellectual relations of consciousness. So today we are having Daylin Paul. He's one of the most respected photographers when it comes to journalism. And his work has been shared all across the globe with multi awards that he has under his belt. And with a lot of years that he has spent in not only just being a photographer himself, but also developing other photographers, being a lecturer in Market Photo Lab, which is in Johannesburg, and studied at Rhodes University journalism. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, please help me and put your digital hands together and let us welcome Daylin Paul. Sir, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. Thanks for that introduction. It's very flattering, but I don't know if I'm one of the most respected photographers to grace this land, or a very highly respected with regards to journalism. I'm just another South African doing my part and doing my work. So yeah.
Yeah, and thanks for also honoring like the invite. I know people who've been here in the studio, they know that this has just been like a challenging day. But just thank you for being here and to put work and family aside to just come and be here on this podcast. And we are still starting. I mean, like, it's nothing that big. So with that being said, you don't think you're one of the most respected?
No, I mean, geez, our country has a great photographic legacy and history. I mean, we have people like Ernest Cole and Alf Kumalo and Umar Bacha.
Yeah.
Sam and Zima, all of these great photographers, in whose footprints I'm standing. So no, I'm nowhere close to those guys, that and women who dedicated decades of their lives to documenting the many issues that we have in our country. And in those days, in the apartheid days, it was much harder. So yeah, even now in contemporary circles, I mean, there's a lot of great young South African photographers. So yeah, I don't know about this whole thing. Like, the photography industry, I think it's so difficult to get into that everybody a lot of people want prestige and they want to be known as something or another, because if you don't stand out, then you may not get the assignment or you may not get the job or whatever. So it's that kind of thing. I really don't think about it that way. Not anymore. I think I used to, but for me, photography now is more about sharing, and not about trying to, honestly, not even about trying to make a living, because I've accepted that, like, I'm my bread and butter, the roof over my head, and the plate of food in front of me may not be coming through photojournalism, which is why I kind of started spreading out and doing other stuff.
So we only getting started, right? Usually on this show, I usually ask people different questions that might be based on like the action figures I have here, or it might be other things, that are just on my head, right? So if you can look here, we have like a lion and a zebra, right? I once met a great man, and he said to me, "IroC, in every day on like the jungle, a lion wakes up and says, in order for me to survive today, I need to eat that zebra, and the zebra says, in order for me to survive today, I need to make sure that I don't get eaten by the lion. But the message here, which is important, is it doesn't matter if you wake up as a zebra or a lion. The most important lesson or the most important mission that you have is for you to survive that day, right? So with that being said, if you were to compare yourself between being like a lion or being a zebra, what would you compare yourself to?
Sure. A Hadida? No, I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe the zebra because I like black and white photography. I mean, I'd say that. Like, I think
Yeah.
I used to have that lion when I was a kid growing up.
Sure.
So it's attractive and stuff. But yeah, I think I'm trying to survive. So I think I may not necessarily be a vegetarian or a vegan, but I think that like the herbivorous animals, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not really trying to eat anybody. I'm just trying to not get eaten myself. And I think that that's a lot of us
Yes.
in this stage of capitalism, in this stage of like the colonial experience, and just generally being like from the so-called third world, whether you're Asian, Latin American, or African.
Yeah.
Chances are we wake up on the wrong side of capitalism every day. So we don't do the hunting. Most of us,
We are being
survive.
hunted. Yeah. We are just
And,
trying to.
you know, and trying to get to a space where we're not just surviving, where we're actually living.
Yeah. So with you being a zebra, do you think you grew up like that? Or it's just something that you just kind of like adapted as you grow and you meet different people?
You mean compared to a lion?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it's just my personality. Maybe, yeah, the way I grew up or something. But I think I just kind of like observing things and treading gently and blending in. And, you know, I don't think I'm trying to be the king of the jungle.
Sure.
Like Simba over there. I think I'm more just trying to get by in my life, live in a decent way, and take care of the people and the things that are close to me. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I just think it's my character.
So take us through like you growing up, being born in KZN and how you came to decide that, you know what, I actually want to be a photographer. And you did not just say I want to be a photographer, but you were like, I'm gonna go into journalism.
Okay. Yeah. So growing up in KZN
Yes.
in the mid to late '80s, early '90s, that was an experience. You know, when I was born in '85, that was the apartheid government last state of emergency that they declared, and yeah, there was a lot of violence that I kind of grew up exposed to in KZN. Where I stayed was an area called Reservoir Hills. You know, so with apartheid spatial planning, they always had these buffer zones between you know, black areas and white areas.
Yes.
So often there would be either industrial or semi-commercial spaces, or there would be places inhabited by Indian people or colored people. So the township that I grew up in, and then eventually the suburb that I grew up in were in these buffer zones. And so there was a lot of like hostile violence, you know, in the 90s with
yes.
you know, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi passed away the other day.
IFP, yes,
And you know,
games.
at that stage, you know, that stuff between Inkatha and the ANC in the 90s, it was heavy, you know, with the hostile stuff and whatever. So I kind of grew up with that happening. And a lot of the times I would spill over. I mean, there was a guy that was running from the police one night, you know. I was growing up as a kid, and he tried to break in through our house, and my dad came out like shooting at him. My dad had a gun. I don't like guns.
Oh yeah.
And then the cops came through, and one of their dogs had been shot, and they were like chasing this guy. And you know, these are things that you grow up, you know, with as a child, so it kind of makes this impression on you. And it was a really violent, volatile time in South African history. So, yeah, I think that yeah, part of my development for sure, and the opening up of you know, so like apartheid denotatively means like separateness, right?
Yes.
So like in the 90s when that separateness, those walls started to break down and people started to mix a bit more. I mean, honestly, one of the reasons that I became or I was interested in photography was because of shack settlements. Like growing up in KZN in the 90s, you know, when you had this urbanization starting to happen after the homelands
Yes.
and that whole apartheid vibe was ending. So you had people moving to the cities looking for work, right? And where I was, there's this big road in Durban, Umgeni Road. It's kind of like Witkoppen or like Jan Smuts here in Joburg, right? And there was a part of Umgeni Road as it intersects with the N3 highway, I think, right, where it had just been jungle, you know, before that, and all of a sudden in the early 90s, like shacks started to come up. And this is the area where Abashlali Basamjuntola is actually like, they got a lot of people around like Kennedy Road, like that area,
Yes.
right? And I remember seeing this as a kid, you know, looking out of the back seat of the car, the window, and just being like, Mama, you know, what's happening? Why are these people like living like this? Where's their house and this and that? And my parents being very afraid. And I think a lot of people were afraid in the 90s, in the early 90s about like what was going to happen in South Africa. You know, we were so close to,
No,
like
no problem. Yeah.
like a civil war or something like
Yes,
that, you know.
yes,
There
yes.
was that whole thing of like give peace a chance and whatever. And my parents were always just like, you know, just be very careful, don't go there. Excuse me. And yet, you know, I could see kids in these shack settlements, and I was like, but if there's other kids there, it can't be that dangerous, you know. And so I found later on in life that the camera was almost like a passport. It gives you a reason where in South Africa, if you're the wrong color in the wrong space, people will be like, what are you doing here? You know, like, that's a real thing in South Africa.
Sure.
It really is, right?
Till
But-
date.
yeah, but you have a camera around your neck and they kind of understand it. It doesn't necessarily mean that like you're not a target. I mean, somebody will still maybe be like try and target you to steal the camera or whatever, but people understand your reason. Whereas if you're just kind of standing around like looking at people and observing them, that can come across as pretty creepy. But you have, you know, the camera and then people understand, okay, this guy is here trying to make a picture. So that was part of the reason why I became a photographer.
Yeah. And from then you went to Rhodes
Yeah, so
University.
after I finished matric in Durban, I went to Rhodes in Grahamstown. Well, I was there in Grahamstown, now Makana, in the Eastern Cape, and I did a B-Journ specializing in photojournalism.
Yeah. And from then onwards, we come now to you moving into Joburg. Is this the time where you go and become a lectured market?
Oh no, there was a huge gap. So
Yeah.
I finished school. I finished varsity. I finished varsity in 2006, and I started working immediately in 2007. So my career started at the Daily Voice, tabloid newspaper in Cape Town. So I started in the Cape Flats. I mean, my very first day as a professional photographer. When I say that, I mean I was getting paid to make photographs, right?
Yes.
The first story I did was a boy that was hit by a taxi in
Aish.
a hit and run accident in Kailicha in Cape Town, and his foot got stuck in the wheel or something, and he got dragged
Ouch.
for about 2 or 3 kilometers. His body was just shattered, you know, by the time that they found him. The next story that I went to was a child that was jumping up and down in his bed in Manenberg. And there was a gang like shootout on the street down below, and one stray bullet came through the glass, went through his head. That was my first day as a photographer. So I started off in the Cape Flats, and I did that for about 3 years, and then in 2009 I moved to East Asia. I started teaching English because I still had to pay off my student loans and stuff like that, and I didn't have my own camera. So I was in South Korea for 2 years where I taught English, but then also freelanced for a press agency on that side. Then I came back to South Africa looking for work in 2011 after the World Cup. And I mean, gee, Durban, PE, where my family is now, Cape Town. So I grew up on the N2. I'm a coast person. I never wanted to be in Joburg and live in Joburg and all that stuff. I needed to be close to the ocean, right? But I had no work, right? So I wasted like basically a year of my life, you know, trying to find work and stuff, and that didn't work out. And I saw the opportunity to volunteer again in Asia, and work with the a documentary kind of photography library and gallery in Thailand. So I did that. I moved over there for about a year, and I started doing my own projects and stuff like that. And yeah, I worked in Southeast Asia for about 3 years, and then I came back at the end of 2014 for Christmas to see my mom, and then I ran out of money, so I couldn't go back to Asia, and then I had no choice but to try and find work wherever I could in South Africa, and that ended up being Joburg. So I moved here first, and I was teaching at the Market Photo Workshop once a week, and then I had like other odd jobs. I was like, believe it or not, working for my brother as like a mechanic. I was doing private investigations, believe it or not, like trying to find people that other people were looking for. Yeah, like lawyers that were looking for witnesses in cases and stuff. Because a lot of the skills of a journalist like overlap with that. Like you're trying to find people. You know?
Oh, yes.
So like I hustled. I did a whole bunch of things just to try and pay the rent, right? While still trying to pursue my photography. My photojournalism. So yeah, it was tough. But then in 2015, xenophobia kicked up again, and I was in Jeppe when there's that big hostel in Jeppe, man. What is it called? Volhata, I think it is, men's hostel, right? Where a lot of the xenophobia stuff often starts off from.
Yeah.
And I went there. I mean, I wasn't getting paid by anybody, but I just needed to be there and photograph it. And I met James Otway, who was also a Rhodes alumni, photojournalist, and he later that year went on to become chief photographer at the Sunday Times. And he had seen my work before, and he kind of recognized me out on the street. Or he didn't recognize me. He's like, I've never seen you before, and I usually know like the dudes that are around you.
Like,
yeah. Who are you? And I was like, no, I'm Daylin Paul. And he's like, oh, I've seen your byline. Cool. Are you in Joburg now? And I'm like, kind of. And he's like, would you be interested in work? And I was like, oh God, I really need this work. But I was like, yeah, maybe. And then it worked out. So yeah, James Otway really kind of saved me by giving me that opportunity, because I was really living hand to mouth, doing whatever I could to survive. In some ways, I still am, but at least a little bit more organized now.
Yeah. So by you moving into Joburg, and then you're starting to come into Market Lab, right? And you meet the young aspiring photographers, who wants to jump into the space. What were some of the things like that you were like teaching them, in terms of like the industry itself?
So the Market Photo Workshop is actually not too far from here. It's just down the road in Newtown, right?
Yeah.
Just across a bridge kind of a thing. So I lectured specifically on Photoshop and Lightroom, so the technical stuff, but then also ethics, as well as, we call it professional practice, which is basically how to try and make a living as a photographer. I mean, we find in South Africa, because of the state of our public education system, like a lot of people are out of school, or they finished matric even, but they don't know how to write emails or how to put together invoices and stuff. So it's all very well and good teaching people how to make great photographs. Yeah, but like if you don't know how to run yourself as a business or write emails or that kind of thing, you're never gonna get anywhere. So professional practice, that was kind of my main course at Market Photo Workshop, was teaching hustlers how to hustle. Basically.
Teaching hustlers how to hustle.
With the camera.
You're the pro hustler then?
No, I've just been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
It's like, being a survivor is not necessarily being a champion. Just because you've survived, but as long as you have, doesn't mean that.
But with that coming into with that coming into picture, right? Of you being in Market Photo and how everything runs through, right? Now we're facing a challenge of fees must fall, right? And I saw also on your website, if you want to access Daylin's Paul website, it's www.daylinpaul.com, right? And you'll see there's like a whole work that you did with like fees must fall. Right, and as far as not funding some student, defunding other students, what was your the atmosphere of you teaching hustlers how to hustle, and now Fees Must Fall comes into play?
It was interesting, man. It was a lot of different things. It was a very
Yeah.
tumultuous time in South Africa, and honestly, myself, as a person of color, I had a lot of hope with the students. So in 2015,
Yes.
I think the first Fees Must Fall one started, right? And at that stage, after James had kind of met me and liked my work and stuff, I was stringing for them, so I was getting work from time to time on Sunday times. And because he knew that I knew Grahamstown
Yes.
slash Makana,
Yeah.
because I'd been a student there myself. When the protests started kicking off, they had teams in different parts of the country. So there was a Cape Town team, there was a KZN team, Joburg teams, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And they sent me with another reporter to cover the Eastern Cape, specifically Makana, Grahamstown, and East London, right? So it was really interesting for me to go back to the campus where I had been a student and to see these protests happening, because Fees Must Fall wasn't just about the fees. It was about a lot of things that I think students of color felt about being in these academic spaces that, let's be honest, were not designed for us, right? And honestly, for Fees Must Fall 1 in 2015, not 2 in 2016, right? But Fees Must Fall 1, there were times when I was in tears while I was making photographs, because I felt for these students, and I felt that they were empathizing, or they were vocalizing things that I myself had felt 10 years before that as a student of color at that university. And look, I love Rhodes, right? But like, at that, having grown up during apartheid and all of that stuff, I still kind of saw education as a privilege, and that I was lucky to be there.
Sure.
Ukuri, like 10 years later, people were like, this is our right, and we're not getting it the way that we want it. And that was, I had a lot of hope, man. I thought that this was going to be like a really big political moment in South Africa, where kind of like 76, maybe the students are going to show us the way.
The uprising, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, with a lot of the male student leaders, and not just in the Eastern Cape, but I saw this even here in Joburg, a lot of them got caught up in the cult of personality, and like a lot of them were drunk and whatever during the protests, and that just really like undermined it. And you found that a lot of the sisters were actually the ones that were organizing and keeping people disciplined and galvanized. So there was that. Fees Must Fall the next year, 2016, was very different. And I think by that stage, there'd been some sort of political infiltration or whatever, because people were looking. And let's be honest, some of the name heroes of Fees Must Fall have got political careers now, right?
Most of them.
So I think people were starting to think about it in that way or whatever, and start playing their long game. And for me, 2016's protests were a lot more cynical and not really about the issues at hand. More about kind of displaying power on campuses. And 2016 was more violent, and that showed, even in the photography. It was interesting. I mean, going with some of my students actually to cover this, because we would walk across Mandela Bridge from Market Photo Workshop, and I realized kind of how far our country still has to go. At one particular moment, just around the corner from here, 80, not far from 87 to Korte.
Yeah.
There was a police, Casper Nyala, that was riding around, and the cops were doing drive-bys with their rubber bullet shotguns. So they're just poking the shotguns out the those circular windows, right?
Oh, yes.
And then shooting right at who they thought were students. But this is the reality of South Africa. It was that I had students in my class that were white, I had students in my class that were black, right? Myself and the black students had to take cover when the police came down. The white students could still stand because the police would never shoot at them. And that really made it clear to me. I mean, these were police officers who were also people of color, but they knew that they were safe shooting other people of color, even photographers, right, or whatever. But they wouldn't do it to the white photographers.
I remember actually when that was happening. I think in Verts, what students did was the students of color, when that was happening, they would fall back, and then the white students would come in so that like no one shoots, you know. And I think that it's still devastating even to just think about it now, that something of that magnitude happened in a country where we like now coming into like democracy, and we are living in a country which is like to be known of like having democracy as one thing that they put in the forefront, right? With that being said, right, is there a thing of like artist and anti-government movements and especially the youth, right? Is there like a pattern there that we are seeing or that we have been seeing, not only in South Africa but internationally so?
Am I allowed to swear on this?
Oh no, it's
No.
actually something I actually forgot to mention. Yeah, I'm trying to make this family friendly.
Okay, so no swearing.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. Because if you asked me about that, I was going to swear. If I was going to answer honestly,
yeah,
I think it's very insidious that our government and the political party which runs this government, which was banned by the nationalist government during apartheid,
Yeah.
and had strong songs that were banned and had works of art and books and all the rest of that were banned because the apartheid government thought that it was politically insightful material, right?
Yeah.
That consuming this art would make people rebel against apartheid. I think that our government learned so well from the apartheid government, right?
True.
That they used that against our own people afterwards. Our Department of Sports, Art and Culture, whatever, is a joke. The Eastern Cape, where my family live now, which used to be the cultural kind of heartland of South Africa, is nothing. I mean, like Makana is in devastation. There are potholes everywhere. There's raw sewage running through the streets. It used to be the second biggest arts festival in the world. Not in Africa, not in the Southern Hemisphere, in the world, after Glasgow or Edinburgh Arts Festival. It's in shambles now, right? I think that the government, much in the same way that the first thing that they could and should have fixed was education in 1994. Because remember, that's what the protests were about in 76, it's about the
Yes.
quality of education
Yes.
and it being in Afrikaans. I think that they realized that if you keep people uneducated and you give them food parcels every 4 or 5 years and t-shirts, they'll keep on voting for you. And I think that by defunding, and let me say that again, defunding arts and culture, they're making sure that there's no mirror with which society can hold up to them and say, can you look at yourself? Can you see what you're doing to this country and what you're doing to these people? I mean, Nathi Mtetwa wanted to spend 8 million rand on a flag when there isn't one decent photo gallery that's not privately owned in this country. What is the biggest arts museum in Joburg? JAG, right? Johannesburg Art Gallery. Are you, me, or a young woman, are we going to go and walk there?
No, we're not even.
So that art,
we're not even exposed much to it.
That art is in a sea of crime, preventing it. It's like an island. It's an island protected by all of this other nonsense. So let me not even get started with the government because they want to keep us in the dark so they can keep on exploiting us. And education and art go hand in hand because both are about consciousness, and they don't want us to achieve consciousness. They want us to keep working and to keep quiet.
Sure, man. I can feel the frustration, like being seated here, and I'm just thinking about it. That we still have like a long way to go, right? And we still need to come into terms where we are having elections and we are actually voting for some change to come. Do you think it will come at some point?
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that South Africa is actually a democracy? What does democracy mean?
Nah, I don't. In paper.
Yeah, okay, there we go. Agreed. Then we do agree. In paper, it's a democracy.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Will it ever get better? That's really up to people to decide. I mean, honestly, democracy as a political ideology is not necessarily a foregone conclusion. Western political philosophers, especially at the end of the Cold War, seem to think that like Francis Fukuyama, right? He said this was the end of history when the Berlin Wall fell down and when communism essentially collapsed, right? Because his idea was that there were now, for the first time ever, there was no longer a war of ideologies. There was only one dominant ideology, which is free market capitalism / democracy, right? 10 years later, there was 9/11 and all the rest of that in the whole world. So that was not the end of history, as he would say. I don't think that democracy is a foregone conclusion. I don't even think that democracy is necessarily right. Sometimes, yeah, no. I think that there can be a tyranny of the majority. I really do believe that. So look at the ethnic wars that have happened, not just in our continent, but in other parts of the world, like Yugoslavia and Serbia and Bosnia and all the rest of that. More often than not, democratically, you will have an ethnic group that is the majority,
Yeah.
and then they have some sort of a political or personal or religious issue with the group that is a minority. In terms of the principles of democracy, that is, or maths, you can say that there's a majority exercising its political will upon a minority. But if it's genocide, or if it's concentration camps, or if it's apartheid, it's still wrong.
Sure. Man, I think I'll just need to recap on that only, because truth be told, we have a lot to learn from history. If there was one historical moment that you take from like the anti-government movements and you would apply it today, what would it be in this
Our country or globally?
globally? But you'd apply it in South Africa.
I don't even want to take a global example. I wish that South Africans, I wish that we would be proud of ourselves again. Our country is a joke, and we continue to keep it a joke, right? We say, when things go, with load shedding, whatever, we go, South Africa,
Yeah.
Whereas, in the 90s, we were like, let's give peace a chance. We were so proud to say to the world that we didn't fall into civil war or into race war or any of the rest, that we were bigger and better than that. We should have like some pride.
Yeah.
I believe in the Freedom Charter. I believe in the United Democratic Movement that happened in the 80s. And I don't know how many people will listen to this or how many people remember this or whatever. The ANC didn't free us. Like, the trade unions helped, the
Yes.
churches helped, the students helped, the international boycotts helped. A whole bunch of different people and a whole bunch of different groups did a whole bunch of different things in order for this to happen, right? The United Democratic Movement was that moment where people from all across different walks of life in South Africa said, what would our constitution be? And we decided to call that the Freedom Charter. And the Freedom Charter, one of the things in the freedom, and that was supposed to be the basis of our constitution, right?
Yes.
But the Freedom Charter, one of the things that's in it is that the land and all the mineral wealth of the land shall belong to all the people. And you can't tell me that we're still in one of the most resource rich, especially with things like platinum and all the rest of that now, countries in the world. And there's no benefit. I mean, go to Marikana, go to the communities of Marikana and Marapong and all of these places and see if they've gotten any benefit from the platinum that is in the land where their ancestors' bones are buried.
Mentioning Marikana, right? We are gonna move into a segment called Nominator Hero. But I'm just thinking we can just take a pause a bit on that, right? So there are two books that are here, right? And I have some of my favorite pictures. But can you just please elaborate a bit more further on what is these books about, The Broken Land? What was the project all about?
Okay, so Broken Land is all about coal mining and coal burning for electricity in Mpumalanga, which I started doing basically in 2015 when I started working at the Sunday Times as a freelancer. And I ended up being lucky enough to be awarded the Ernest Cole Award, which gave me the funding, to turn this into an exhibition and a book, which you see in front of you. And so Broken Land, it's kind of like metaphorical. Because in order to actually mine, you have to break the earth open to get to those resources. But you also have to, and I believe this very strongly, that when the colonizers came to Africa, to Asia, to Latin America, South America, right? All of these places, right? Indigenous people had a connection to the land and were living in harmony with it. Industrialization, capitalism, what we see in Mpumalanga and what we see in all these industrialized places, that is like the end point of the colonial capitalist industrialist notion, where the work the worth of the world is in the products that come out of it. So it's like the worth of a forest is only the timber. The worth of the ground is only the yield of crops or the amount of gold that you can get. And like your ancestors and my ancestors did not live that way, right? There would be no climate change if your ancestors or my ancestors had the dominant ideology.
True.
But they didn't, and they were colonized. And in that moment, our connection to the land, I believe very strongly, was broken as well. And so broken land is both, it's looking at how, and our country's history is all about mining, right? From Kimberley, right, and the diamonds and that rush to the gold right here where we're sitting in the Witwatersrand, right?
Yeah.
That notion of breaking open the earth to get what is in it is what I think has broken us as a country. So those are the three layers to the title Broken Land.
You know, I've seen this picture before, right?
Yeah.
But I never noticed something here. I never noticed this boy.
Oh, the guy with the wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
Oh, and I waited so long. I waited until I got him right there on that path, so that he can know, because I mean that's how we work with contrast, right? He's dark, so you need something light around him, right, in order for him to stand out. So I'm sorry you didn't see him before, but maybe it's because I mean digitally things are shown very small. You know, like on a screen or something. Yeah, with the detail, right? Yes. In a book or in an physical exhibition, it's a different thing. So yeah, do you have landscapes like this near where you are? Because it's quite industrialized, I think, right? Where you are.
Yeah, at some point I do, but remember, it was actually this picture. Yeah, this is the picture that actually made me to fall in love with like your work, right? Remember, because when we met, right, I went through like the gallery and saw like different pictures, but when I saw this one and to understand the story of like these people who are here, they're here because they thought they would get employment opportunities from the power station, you know, that they live at the back of. And now in the township where I stay in, right, it was also a squatter camp at some point, so we just like developing. And people, when they moved in there was like, well, there still is, not sure if I should say their name.
Probably don't.
I'll give you their red, starts with a T.
Okay. That
big company.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So at the back we have that, and we still till today. I mean, like I was born there, I grew up there. I still don't know what's happening that side. And for me, this like took it back home to say we move into cities, we move into places, and we live in places where we are mostly uncomfortable to live in. You know, in situations that are inhumane. You know, with the thought that we're gonna get jobs there. And when we actually come into that picture, it's only to find out that it's only those who have money to access those jobs. They actually do access those jobs. It's people who have moved, you know, bit further away from that area, who are actually benefiting from all the pollution that's happening in that area. So this was one picture that I really, really related to out of like all the pictures that I've seen. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you know.
Try to.
Sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
Johannesburg, do you know it was the first city in the world to be built without any thought to the water source? So almost every other city is like built near a river or built near a dam or built near some sort of source of water is life, right?
Yeah.
In Johannesburg, it was always about the gold. Always about the gold. It was the first city in the world, like I said, to my understanding, that was built without a water source first. The water was brought in from somewhere else. And I think that from that stage onwards, and I think in South Africa especially, this thing of migrant labor, you know, you can be an immigrant in another country, sure, but you can also be a kind of an economic immigrant within your own country. And almost everybody in Johannesburg is not from Johannesburg. We had to leave our own like places wherever we're from, which 9 times out of 10 are more beautiful, right? To be here. So like the last time I came from the airport, right? I got picked up by an Uber guy, and we were talking, and this bra was also from KZN. He was from a place deep in KZN called Tugela Ferry. Shout out to any folks from Tugela Ferry, right?
I don't even know about
Dude,
it.
Tugela Ferry, it's deep, right?
Yeah.
And that guy was just telling me like straight up, right? He was just like, he doesn't want to be in Joburg. He hates being here and whatever. But he just got to. If it was up to him, if he could make enough money to take care of his family and stuff, he would be back in Tugela Ferry any day of the week and twice on Monday. And I'm like, you know what? True as faith, me too. I'd be back. Durban's. There's a part of me that's still in Durban, but I would be in other places other than Johannesburg. But we're here because of the opportunity, so to speak. Excuse me, right? We're getting this dirty, polluted air that's coming in from Mpumalanga anyway. We're dealing with load shedding and traffic and getting jacked and higher prices. You know, we go home to our families in December and stuff, and everyone's like, yeah, but you're eating nicely there in Joburg, so you're gonna come back with money when it's December time. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's all of these things, but actually, you know, we only came here, or maybe our immediate ancestors came here because of the economic opportunity, and like, I don't know. I don't know if the cycle will end or break, but Joburg is a strange one. It's a strange city. There's times and there's parts of it that I really love, but no, this was not where I really
wanted to be.
Yeah, no, I'm from the coast. Like I need the ocean.
Yeah.
But yeah, better people here in Joburg, I think,
Sure.
than in a lot of other places that you can find. So, and I like that to a certain extent in Joburg, you can be whoever you are. Yeah, there are a lot of things going for Joburg, but it was never a place that I myself had wanted to come to. And I mean, geez, take it all the way back into history as well. Why the people that were living in this land originally, whether they were Khoisan, whether they were Xhosa in the Eastern Cape, there was a time when the British colonialists came up with the hut tax, and that's how labor started in South Africa, because people had been living in huts off the land as pastoralists for generations, lifetimes even, right?
Yeah.
Many lifetimes. And the British come over and they're like, no, you can't just live. You have to pay to live. Oh, you don't have money. Well, if you work in this mine, we'll give you money. And that's how it started. And now we all end up in Joburg.
And so with Job, but I think with that history, it makes sense why Joburg is the way it is right now.
In what way?
Because everyone is here to hustle, basically.
Yeah.
So if you're not hustling, others are hustling people, others are hustling jobs, you know. But one way or another, we are all here to hustle, and this is why it makes it a jungle. Because in the first place, people who came in here, the only thing that was in their mind more than like Ubuntu, humanity, it was profits. And till date, this place is still like ran by a motion of like people before profits.
Or profits before people, you mean?
Or profits before people.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's this place, somewhere, Rand Lords. You had these characters at the turn of the century. I mean, there's this bar around your Kitcheners, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these guys were like the Empire in Star Wars. You know what we're talking about? We're like Kitchener and Cecil John Rhodes and whatever. All they cared about was like expanding the empire and like, you know, smashing the natives under their boot and taming the land and stuff.
For real.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's the history of this place. Like, you know, so.
I think I'm gonna take a tour and like just learn more about it.
Let me tell you. So right, not far down the road that way towards Brixton, right?
Yeah.
There's a place called George Harrison Park, right? Not named after the Beatle, named after a man, right? Called George Harrison, who had the farm, right, in the Witwatersrand here, right,
Yeah.
where they first discovered gold, right? And there were two men named Johannes that were involved. There was a guy, Willem Johannes or whatever, right, who was the person that found the gold on George Harrison's farm. And then there was another guy that was sent from the Netherlands, something Johannes, right, who actually came to verify whether it was real gold or not. So between the two of them, that's why Johannesburg is called Johannesburg, right? It was named after them. Now, here's the crazy thing,
Oh.
right? You can go to that park right now, right, in George Harrison Park, and it was left open, right, and there are Zama-Zamas right now, still digging in there, still dying in there, still trying to find gold. To this day, the same holes and the same whatever. It's the police have like semi-filled it, but it's not completely full, right?
Yeah.
That people, so those same mining shafts essentially that people came here for 150 whatever years ago. My thing is 150 years ago when those people were arriving with pickaxes and buckets and stuff, some of them were maybe convicts from Scotland or Wales or prospectors from America or whatever the case was.
Yep.
They weren't Zama-Zamas then when they didn't have a license to go and mine. Right now, people that have no other employment, that don't want to be gangsters or all the rest of that. And I know that there are some protection rackets and there are some criminal elements within the people that are referred to as Zama-Zamas
Yeah.
or artisanal miners, right? But honestly, nobody goes into the belly of the earth for fun. There are easier ways to make money. People are doing it because they are desperate. And the notion of the unemployment, people are lazy in South Africa and all the rest of that. Okay, some people are lazy, but but go and look at the people that are hustling. Go and look at the people that are, like I say, crawling into the belly of the earth without even safety equipment or all the rest of that because they don't want to die. They want to live. And isn't that actually like what our country's supposed to be about?
I never actually thought of it in that way, right? But here's one thing I just want us to do prior closing, right? We have a segment, that I created, right, called Nominate a Hero. And why I actually did that was to, give gratitude where it's due, because we live in times where there's a lot of people who are doing like a lot of work out there. Like there are real activists who are doing a lot of things. Not even all just activists. They are like ordinary people who don't even like believe that they are activists. Who they are helping, this country to become a better place to be, right? But usually, I do not nominate my hero. I allow my guests to nominate their hero and tell us why is that specific person their hero.
Sure. I don't know if I have a specific person, but I think that it is a recurring character, both within my life and within my work. In some ways, it's kind of the I wouldn't say that it's the God that I worship, but it's the notion that I serve, and it's the idea of the African mother. So you will see versions of the African mother throughout the book.
Yeah.
And my mother is of Indian descent, but she was born in Africa. She gave birth to me in Africa. She's an African mother, right?
Yes,
And the thing is, if you want to look at the best community leaders in South Africa, go find the creche. Because 10 times out of 10, those women that are running the creches end up becoming counselors. They end up becoming short-term loan providers. They end up becoming domestic abuse interventionists.
Yeah.
They end up doing all of these things. So my dad died when I was young, when I was 13.
Yes.
And I was raised by my mom and my aunts and a lot of different women and this kind of fixation that we have in South African politics about power and domination and these very male kind of ideas. It's just like, if you want to see how to lead, look at Magogo.
Sure.
Just
look at Magogo and
start with shelter, right?
Yes.
And food and water. That's why we love Gogo, right? It's because we can go there and once there's that, then so that's what I don't know. Those are my heroes. Those are the people that I don't believe in the notion of the voice of the voiceless. Everyone's got a voice. Not everyone has a microphone. So I try to mic up through my camera the people who I think are doing the best work. And anybody that listens to the show, any South African, you don't even have to walk 1 kilometer. You will find one of those women somewhere. They are selling sweets at the robot, or they're handing out those flyers, or they are taking public transport to go and clean somebody's nice house in the suburbs, so that they can go back to their shack and make something for their child to eat later that night. That is the South African hero.
Oof. And in the Broken Land, the book, right? This lady here, Umam Upeti Uzulu, right? Is actually one figure. When I looked into like the picture, and by myself, before you even told me like the background of this story, by myself, I already like imagined like how much of like work she puts in daily to make sure that like the household, it's still like they still sleep with like food and dignity, yeah. So I it's from people that I've seen in this book. I think her and her story in particularly was one that like touched me in terms of like where should we go from here and how do we learn as a people, to move on. But how can people access the Broken Land, the book?
You can find me on my website, Instagram. So it's just my handle is my name at Daylin Paul. You can
Yes.
see the spelling of my name on the books. You can hit me up on DMs or whatever, and I can send you through a copy, or else you can contact me through the website, and I can send you a copy of the book. Yeah, that's the main way. Otherwise, I mean, you can order it directly from my publishers, who are Chicana Books, or Chicana's website always has copies. And
Yeah.
then you'll find it in like some exclusive books. Some of the other big shops, bookshops will have it. Yeah.
So how is it in closing? How is traveling, going to Mpumalanga, telling stories of people and being, you're not in your natural habitat, like a place where you grew up in, and most of these people are like people don't know at all. How was that experience?
Look, I mean, I do this for a living, right? So I've spent many years of my life kind of going to places where I'm not from, and asking people to tell me, the intimate details
Yeah.
of their life and their suffering, and those kinds of things. So that's my craft. So I wouldn't say that going to Mpumalanga was particularly different from some of the other stuff that I did in that way, but I think the difference was the amount of time that I spent in the place itself kind of affected me.
Yeah.
In this book, I've tried to make photographs of people. So I've tried to make portraits that are landscapes. So like this picture that you were talking about Mambeti,
Yes.
you can see, right, how her landscape has informed the condition that is upon her face. Do you understand what I mean? You can see like how that, I believe, that environment kind of explains the expression on her face,
Yes.
right? So one aspect of Broken Land was trying to make portraits that were landscapes. The other part was about trying to make landscapes that were portraits. So you look at some of the scapes which have no people or whatever in it,
Yes.
but trying to see or feel the sadness that the land itself kind of expresses, and I think I felt a lot of freedom as a photographer in doing this, because like with Fall and stuff, people
Yeah.
for a long time kind of associated me with like conflict and violence and bang bang club stuff and whatever.
Sure.
And I really wasn't making a living as a photographer, and I started to do landscape photography almost to remind myself why I started to do this in my life anyway.
Yeah.
And it was from working on that I was able to bring those skills to bear when I was making the book itself. So that freedom of not having to work for a boss or something like that, or think about what a photo editor would think, self-editing and yeah, I mean, it's a monograph, right? So it's like an author writing their own book. It's your own thoughts, it's your own structure, it's your own way of your own argument, essentially, that you're putting forward. So it was a beautiful experience. I'm hoping to make a new book, so I'm starting project this year. I got another kind of mentorship. I missed out on the fellowship, sadly. It would have been $20,000, which would have been amazing. But through Ami Vitali and the Vital Impacts Environmental Photography Grant,
Yeah.
I'm getting a mentorship, and maybe actually there's going to be an exhibition of the cover photograph of this book. It's going to be one of the photographs exhibited later this month or beginning of October in Italy, at a
wow.
festival called the Festival of Ethical Photography. So that was through that grant. And with the mentorship, I'm trying to do a project on Limpopo and our government's new plan to take some beautiful protected UNESCO protected biosphere in Vembe and turn that into a new steel mill and coal power plant so they can make more money. So while there's still something of that ecosystem that's left to save, unlike Broken Land, which was looking at the devastation after it happened, right now I'm trying to get there and look at this place before they destroy it. But always I'm hustling, so it's about funding and stuff like that. So as we draw towards the end of the year, I'm going to try and do some print sales, try and do some more sales at the book and stuff because, you know, all my personal work is self-funded. And that can be hard, but, you know, there's no time to complain. There's work to be done. So just hustle. So if any support, if you guys hear this, follow me up on Instagram and you'll see stuff on my store there and posts going forward because what's happening in Limpopo is really important. And I think the kind of working title of that book, but I'm going to make it a book as well. It's going to be, inshallah, a sequel to Broken Land. I'm thinking of calling it Bitter Water because our government is going to use the waters of the Limpopo River before it gets to Botswana, mind you, right? To cool down these steel refineries and for the coal power that's going to be there. They'll argue now and say, "Oh no, we'll use renewables," but it's not going to, right? And what that means is that the water supply for Botswana, Zim, Limpopo, and the southern part of Mozambique, up down to Shashai, will be affected by this plan. So imagine deciding to force a drought upon your own people and your neighbors because it's financially lucrative.
Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Daylin Paul. I'm not sure what is it that I'm leaving behind because there's just a lot that we still need to sit and uncover. But just do me one favor and go www.daylinpaul.com and just support the movement. Buy the books. Each copy is selling at
$350.
$350. Wow, nice. $350.
Excluding postage.
Okay. No. Excluding postage, the book is selling at 350 rands. You want the book, just contact www.daylinpaul.com. Otherwise, my name is IroC, and this is the Intellectual Relations of Consciousness. Today has been one of the toughest days of me doing this podcast, but from my lips to God's ears, if you need anything, just say it, and it shall be given unto you, you know. And it's just me signing out. If you're a hustler, continue to hustling. But me, I'm sitting with a hustler who teaches hustlers how to hustle. The name is Daylin Paul. Remember that.